So one of the reasons we are on the microphone is because we want to make sure that the voices of the people in this room today are heard by people in this room, and that we're understanding the issues that we care about most with regards to this city. But also we want to make sure that people who aren't in this room also have a chance to hear about these ideas and have a chance to think about the impacts that they have on our community. So we're actually giving a voice for people in this room and also people who aren't in this room to hear that. And as I was saying, RSA is very much focused about bringing citizen voice into council decision making. And so tonight is really about hearing the range of voices in the room, the range of ideas in the room, and having us to start to co-design or co-look at the ideas and see what are the things that the community can be doing and what are the things that council can be doing on these particular issues.
So on behalf of the Rural City, I'd like to welcome you all here. And this is the first time council has undertaken this type of community engagement. And we wanted to reach out and talk to our community in a different way to how we have in the past. The Our Say online forum is interactive and lets people discuss and debate council issues from the comfort of their homes or on a mobile device. And this approach lets community members air their ideas and have a conversation with council and each other about what council's priorities should be. Our Say helps us understand how the community sees council's priorities and helps the community understand the different things council has to take into account when making big decisions and developing a budget. And this type of consultation, I think, might be very useful when decisions have to be made on what can be delivered within the rate capping regime that we're heading into in the next few years. So I hope that tonight's workshop is productive and that everyone approaches it with respect for each other's ideas. Thank you.
So by council's own literature, our red bins in rural areas contain 50% green waste on average. But as yet, we've only been deemed necessary for a weekly collection in the urban areas. And it's so imperative that the green bins should be collected for health and hygiene on a weekly basis, this should translate for all areas, or at the very least a return to weekly red bin collections for our rural areas. We have 2 trucks collecting once a fortnight in the King Valley now, so it shouldn't be a cost burden to revert back to our weekly collection.
Thank you. And also that question actually got first and second place, and the second was basically to have the red bins collected weekly, down below by Jenny White. Can I have someone from council come and give some of the challenges and opportunities around this, and then we'll turn it over to the tables.
So firstly, I wanted to step back a little bit and look at the reasons why we changed the waste collection services. So I think the councils to our north did it pretty well with their TV campaigns. So Albury, Corowa, Greater Hume, Indigo, Towwell, all their waste goes into the Albury landfill, and they've had that TV campaign going for some time now, talking about half waste. And the reason they're doing that is because their landfill is rapidly filling. And all the landfills in North East Victoria and across the border are the same. We're rapidly running out of space, and when we do, we'll have to transport our waste considerable distances. So the 2 biggest landfills are one's 223 kilometres away and one's 232 kilometres away. So if we run out of space in North East Victoria, we're going to have to start carting our waste, which isn't a good environmental outcome, and it's a very expensive outcome. So a number of years ago, most councils brought in recycling, and that's now widely accepted, and that took a huge amount out of the waste stream. The next biggest item is the organics, and there's been a lot of surveys done over many years now about the contents of red bins, and they've pretty much been 50% of most red bins right around the country contains organic material, or 50% of it is organic material. Our survey in Wangaratta was done over 100 bins at random, and it came up to 52%. And it's been pretty much proven by our collection service to date. We've only been going a few months, and we've diverted over 2,000 tonnes of organics at the moment, which ends up being a big saving in the long term when we don't have to replace our landfills as quickly. Just touching on Deirdre's comment about 50% in the rural bins. I'm not sure whether it's 50% in the rural bins organic. I think it's 50% on the survey, it was 52% across that random selection of the 100 bins. So far we've actually been collecting 25% more than we predicted green waste, which is actually costing us money in the short term because we're carting the waste over to Shepparton for processing. Once we get our own processing plant up, we'll actually be saving money because of that additional collection, because it won't be going into landfill and we won't be paying so much for the processing. So there's some long-term savings there by doing as well as we're doing. So why was it limited to the urban areas? A lot of the feedback we had was that people with the larger blocks had chooks, or they had their own composting facilities, and the waste was going in there. Now there's exceptions, of course, and the obvious exceptions in the commercial places, which generally don't have those same options, or they have the options, but the amount of waste they have probably doesn't make it viable. But that was the main reason. The rural people didn't want the service at all, and there was probably good reason for it. And secondly, in the rural areas, the distance between bins is over a kilometre, whereas in the urban areas it's less than 20 metres. So obviously the cost of picking up a bin in the rural area is far more expensive than the urban areas. It blows the overall costs out in the rural zones. So that was why why that decision was made initially. A few figures on the collection service, and this is a direct result of Delia's and perhaps just click them over.
Oh yes, right.
So in the rural zone we have over 4,000 there residential collections, and you can see 114 commercial commercial bin services. Now what that means is that it takes 55 hours to complete those pickups, and we have that split into 8 runs. So the runs are worked out to be as efficient as possible. So the ideal scenario is that a truck comes back to the landfill almost full. So you don't want to reach capacity and then miss out on bins and have to go all the way back. So we aim at 95% fill rate for those trucks. And it's also timed in with the length of the time, optimum time for drivers to be operating, and just the economies around actual distances. So it's worked out with quite a bit of precision. Now, part of Delia's question was there's 2 trucks operating in the valley. We've got it split into 2 zones because of all those efficiencies that I talk about. If we collected every bin weekly, it would double the distance those trucks would be travelling, because they're going to each property twice instead of once. And wouldn't double the quantities they're picking up, but we think it would be more than what they'd pick up on a fortnightly service. So a few figures for you. If we went to green bins in the rural area, we'd be looking at a cost of around $277. We know exactly what it costs to do the pickup, so the truck costs, the driver costs, the capital costs. The amount of waste would be the variable, and we're not quite sure. We know in the urban areas we pick up on average 10 kilos per residence per week, but in the rural areas, would that be the same? Would they be putting their grass cuttings into the bin? Probably not. So a bit of a guess there, but we think it's about 277, and they'd still have to have the red bin fortnightly, so it'd be a total cost of about $490. The other part of the question was if we went back to weekly collections in the rural areas, and at the moment the cost for the red bin in the rural areas is $213 per annum, and to go to weekly it would jump to about $408. So it's not double, because we wouldn't get double the amount of waste, but we would get more waste, or we believe we'd get more waste by having a weekly collection. And the thing to remember with all this, the aim was to reduce the waste going into landfill. So part of that is putting pressure on people to sort their waste and be as careful as they can about what goes in the red bin. Not part of the question, but part of the discussion we've had with Delia and Upper King Valley residents is the commercial bins and whether we can do a separate commercial run. So we've got some figures there as well. So that King Valley run is the upper King Valley, and you can see Whitfield, Moyoo, Chest Hunt, and between the businesses and our own bins, there's 43 bins in that upper King Valley area. Next slide. It's a bit hard to see, but this shows a sliding scale of cost. So these costs are just the collection, not the waste disposal. And waste disposal, what it costs us to go to the landfill, 20 kilos costs about $4. So if the commercial bins had 20 kilos in them each week, it'd be costing about $4 on top of these figures. Now, if we had an opt-in system, we wouldn't get them all, but an estimate there is if we were about halfway, each service would be costing about $11, collection service, plus probably about the $4 for the actual waste into the landfill. So it does jump up quite considerably. I think that works out about $364 extra to provide that service if we picked a middle number of opt-ins with the commercial. We've got similar figures on the other urban run that rural run, Glenroe and also Middle Everton run. There's 37 bins in that area. The costs are slightly less because there's less distance involved, but probably $8 or $9 per collection plus the waste, which is probably around $4. So that's just to give an idea for a bit of discussion for tonight. So, but look, there's one more, sorry, and it's moving on to the next question, and it was really about the urban bins wanting to go to a weekly collection. Just one slide there with the figures. Currently, the fee is $126 for fortnightly. To go to weekly, we think it'd be about $240. So again, it's not doubling because it wouldn't double the amount of waste, but the collection part of it is still the biggest, so it would be up to about that figure.
And I want us to brainstorm at the table. Some people, this issue is near and dear to their hearts, and some, this is a bit of a fresh issue or something that might have some fresh ideas about. And so we want to know, what can council be doing on this particular idea, and what can the community be doing on this particular idea? Someone presenting from each of the tables. Maybe we'll start with Alan's table. Someone from this table wants to just present a few ideas that have come through.
Red bins weekly in the warmer weather.
Education on practices of using the bins and correctly reducing your waste.
Investigating why EPA levies are so expensive and what can be done in that realm.
Opportunity to present a case for more expenditure on roads, footpaths, curb and channel within the rural city. I suppose in looking at Wangaratta, I must say that our forebears did a very poor job in laying out what could have been an oasis in the northeast. I suppose I need to start at the beginning in the development of Templeton Street nearly 100 years ago. My first two slides will show that one side of the street, looking in an easterly direction, there are still deep brick gutters and unmade road that is not maintained in any way. Well, it hasn't been for the last 6 years that I can talk about. Slide 3 is looking in a westerly direction, and you can see from the build-up of rubbish the council do little or nothing to clean this drain. The other side just has an open gutter with little attention being given to runoff of water, and you will notice that the road is not even formed on that side. With this in mind, I visited the new areas of Trotman Drive and the Arlington Estate, and slide 5 shows what can be done with a bit of initiative at the time of construction. What a breath of fresh air to see wide streets and stormwater being directed into drains located in the middle of the thoroughfare. With a bit of intuition and planning, I believe that Templeton Street in that area could be turned into a similar thoroughfare to Trotman.
You want the next slide?
Sorry.
No, you're right.
All good.
After all, residents of Templeton Street pay a premium on their rates because of location. Residents in this area have a yearly rate bill in excess of $2,200 plus, and to think that after 100 years...
1 minute left, 1 minute left.
Right.
1 minute left. 1 minute left.
Yeah. From there I visited the Wangaratta area where the Housing Commission built homes in the period following World War I, around 1950. No streets in this area have footpaths, and slides 7 and 8 were taken in Rattray Avenue. These would have been the original curb and channel, and I concur some work has been done.
30 seconds.
Slides 9, 10 and 11 are just showing an example of how much patching the Rural Council do over many years in some of the laneways, and when you read the CBD master plan is intended to make these laneways beautiful for the city.
15 seconds.
Slide 13 shows the lack of attention given to one of Wangaratta's most used north-south carriageways, the only section of Swan Street which does not have curb and channel. And the West End, slides 13 and 14 are taken in Madower Avenue and a small section of Nolan Street. But nothing's been done there since 1960.
Wrap it up, Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are just the tip of the iceberg. Rural streets are also badly in need of some work done on them, and I think we should be refocusing rather than looking at leisure all the time.
We have regular inspections of all of our assets, and we can't always do exactly what we'd please with budgets, but and we've got a lot of catch up. And I've got a few slides that I want to show you of the curb and channel, because I knew Ken had some there of how we do things and hopefully where we're going and how we can do things a bit better. So we actually have condition ratings on everything. So 0 is perfect and 10 is atrocious. And so there's 11 scales, and I've just got a few pictures. So that 0, 1 is something that's essentially brand new in those new estates that we were talking about. And that's how I was going to start. In the new estates, we force conditions so we get good solutions. So we have an infrastructure design manual. Every development must meet that. So the developer constructs to those standards and then we take over. So we've got control now, but we don't, of course we didn't have the same level of control over the years. So as we work through these, condition 2, a bit older, but still fully functional. Jump up to condition 4 and see some cracks starting to appear where the weeds are growing through where the expansion joints have been. Up to 11. Level 6, you can see near the tree there's some damage caused by the tree roots. So it's still functioning okay, but it's clearly damaged. Up to condition 8, and you can still see some real heaves and damage to the road. So where the water's got through the curbing, it's damaging the road, and that one's down at Urunga.
1 minute left.
And to show that we do things, this is Sicily Avenue. I took this photo today. So this is a section of curbing that we have replaced. Over the years, that council's condition intervention level, so the level that we've said we will replace something, was level 9, which is pretty atrocious. We believe it needs to be around 6 or 7. The difference in per annum costs to catch up, level 9 was about $100,000 a year. Level 7 is $1.6 million a year. So somehow or other we have to catch up and get all our curbing back to level 7, and it's the same with the footpaths, etc. But we are making inroads. We've spent more money on curb and channel and footpath in the last 2 years than we have for many, many years, if not ever.
So from the community aspect, there was awareness of mobility scooter usage and the safety and at the speeds and use on roads and footpaths.
And the public to be encouraged to report damage, because often building trucks damage the curbs.
Respecting differing expectations, that was in relation to what people's expectation of their street is.
My question was the two pools being preserved in the Shire. I have a right up here. The Olympic pool needs to be preserved for the public, as it is a historical pool and it was the first outdoor pool built in Wangaratta back in 1954 to commemorate the Melbourne Olympics. Same with Urunga, it's older and it also needs to be kept historically valued, as it was funded from the community, and Our Lady's Primary School, they also helped fund it back in that day. So it also needs to be preserved. So the pools should be preserved in the budget. Wangaratta needs these pools. It is a part of Wangaratta. They both are. So thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. And we at Council certainly understand that the pools at both Urunga and Olympic are significant in terms of the contribution that that makes to the community, but also how people feel about them. So we don't want this to just be about money or about the hard infrastructure, but we're also acknowledging that they have played a really important role in our community and to this point have been very valuable. One of the hardest decisions that any council has to make is around the future of community assets, and infrastructure and facilities is a really hard thing to do. Purely for that reason, people get really attached to these facilities, and rightfully so. What we do need to keep in mind though is that 90% of our aquatic visitation is actually at the moment towards our WISAC facility. We understand that this is around the changing way people use aquatic facilities and recreation facilities in general. We do want to acknowledge that the Olympic pool and indeed Urunga has served a really valuable position in our community for the last 50 years, and Council has positioned the future direction of our aquatic provision for the next 50 years. This is about adapting our facilities and looking at how our community needs to use facilities around recreation and aquatics moving forward. Importantly, it's not just around the cheapest option. We understand that we need to make sure that we're making responsible decisions around maintenance and operational costs for the long term. Council has a responsibility to not just people now but to future generations to make sure that any facility development or redevelopment is done so with the most financially responsible lens, but also around making sure that they meet the needs from a competitive point of view and a recreational point of view and a social view as well. We've had a long look at how these facilities are being used. We've looked at attendance rates, we've looked at the hours that they're being used, we've looked at the kind of projects and programs that work well, the kinds of things that attract people, and we do recognise that programming these facilities means that more people come along. What we understand that to mean though is that we have the capacity, if we do things together, to get a greater impact for our community. So we see a huge amount of opportunities with the kinds of things that Hugh has highlighted around if we have events on, if we run things and if we program and if we market, we know that if we consolidate our facilities that we can do this much better.
From the community side, promote the value of the pools to the community to get them involved in coming along.
There was an opinion that perhaps the council is catering more to the minority of elite or competitive swimmers and not the majority of people living in Wangaratta who would be just more recreational and fun swimmers. Operate the pools in conjunction with the community and give them some ownership.
No. Well, what I'll do is I'm going to read Brett's idea out, and then we're going to discuss at the table so that we have a recording, and we'll send it around so Brett can share with the people who voted for his question, as well as you can share with people in the community who you think would be very interested in this and would want to chip in on your ideas as well. But so Brett's idea is to remove the parking meters around the town so that people will again be keen to park and shop, as all nearby towns have free parking.
Cities such as Wodonga, which is another one that's quoted that doesn't have paid parking, they've actually made a conscious decision not to have paid parking because of their direct competition with Albury, although it's not a level playing field because Albury recoup costs through a much higher penalty fee system. The penalties for parking infringements in Albury are considerably higher than what they are in Victoria because of different sets of legislation. In areas where council have only time parking, the expectation of residents and adjoining property owners is that these areas are more regularly patrolled and enforced. An area in Wangaratta such as this is the hospital. Some of the opportunities and positives, the new parking meters have been well received after some initial setup issues, where we now have a consistent level of machines that are consistently used across other parts of Victoria. So they're the same machines that are used in Shepparton, same machines that are used in Melbourne. So when people are travelling, they're not trying to walk in and trying to understand how to use them. People are currently parking and shopping in the CBD and the spaces are well patronised. We work regularly with Business Wangaratta and we're not hearing a lot of complaints from the Chamber of Commerce. Paid parking is viewed as a better way of encouraging movement of vehicles around the CBD. And one opportunity is also to advocate for increased penalties, such as the New South Wales system.
Check the contract to ensure what happens if council were to remove all the meters in the first instance. We're kind of all talking about a bit of a moot point if contractually we can't even remove the meters.
Cheaper long-term worker permits perhaps, because we're going to lose some all-day parking with some new developments.
And report faults. Does this mean that if I'm going to park in Wangaratta at one of your new Plandingo meters, that I must have a mobile phone? It's the only way I can report a fault.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to turn it over to Ruth to just explain what are some of the timings. So what happens from here? These are just the initial ideas, but then we're actually going into a longer process before we actually make a budget decision. And then after Ruth presents, I'm just going to share one other closing insight to wrap things up, and then we'll finish right on 8 o'clock. Over to you, Ruth.
Right, 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the budget process. We've actually just started with managers getting their instructions for their budgets late last week and the final batch today. So they'll be working on their operational budgets and they'll also be putting forward submissions for new projects. And so that's an important part of the budget process. That goes until the end of March nearly, and then corporate management team puts together the budget for the administrators to consider. And you can be confident that you have your 3 administrators here. I can see Irene taking some notes, and also I'm sure Alistair and Rodney are taking mental notes. And so the process is that the budget will be compiled. Your ideas that you've given us tonight will be put together, and we will have that information at hand during the compilation of the budget process, and the administrators will sign off on that. We will have a special meeting on the 3rd of May to actually put the budget out for public consultation. That's the period that Niall was talking about, where we normally ask you to look at the budget. You have quite an insight into the preparation of the budget, so I'm sure that will be a much more meaningful time for you. And we will consider the budget at our ordinary council meeting in June.
So just very briefly on behalf of the Rural City, thank you for taking the time both to make your suggestions originally on the online forum or to come to one of our face-to-face sessions, or to spend the time to review those things and cast your vote. But mostly, thank you for coming along tonight and taking the time and effort to talk through and explore those ideas a bit further. It's always really useful to be able to sit down and have some conversations about what was meant by what's often a fairly brief statement in an online portal. So thank you for making yourselves available and spending the time to do that with us. Brilliant.
So our plan going into using this format for the budget sessions was to try and engage a group of people that we wouldn't normally hear from. So we had hoped that this would be a good mechanism to encourage others who don't normally participate to participate. I think that has worked to some degree. Certainly there were people here tonight, for example, that wouldn't regularly come to council forums. And I think there are people who've been onto the online site and looked at and maybe voted for things that wouldn't ordinarily be involved in those sort of things. So I think it's been successful.
I think it's been worthwhile giving it a try, and I think it's got great potential for when we're working through budgets, and the community are going to have to understand that there's going to be some trade-offs. If they want this, they can't have as much of that, because with rate capping it is going to limit our ability to give the services that are up to what people sometimes expect.
I really found our say quite easy, especially being technological. I'm in a very big Apple, and I'm very technological with my work. So I like using the Our Say online platform, because you can just put your post, you can log into Facebook, use Facebook, and it will just put your name on, log in your ID, and it'll be up, and it's a good way, I reckon, and it should be really, it should be used more often for lots of rural towns like this, like rural cities really, for this place. So it should be implemented more often in these sort of areas, which, yeah, and I found it really good. I reckon I'd give it a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10.